My name is Mary Farwell, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Hooksett Library for our, I think it's the third annual school board forum. I'd like to invite you to recite the pledge with me, and then we will get started.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our moderator for this debate is Don Riley, and he is going to be speaking about how this is going to run. But first, Becky Burke has an announcement. I'd like to ask her to come forward.
Some of you may already know, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that I will not be able to accept a seat on the school board, even if I am elected on March 11th, because I've taken a position that poses a conflict of interest for me. So I would ask that you specifically not vote for me for school board. If you would like to write me in as moderator, there's no conflict of interest with moderator, and there's no one running for moderator. So that would be fine, but please do not vote for me for school board. Someone said to me today, well, I'm going to vote for you anyway, just because, you know, I want to show support. Please do not do that for a couple of reasons. One is it's a wasted vote, and two, if I end up getting enough votes to be one of the three, then I have to resign, and the board has to appoint someone to take my resigned seat. So let's not put the new school board in a situation where they have to do that. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to talk to people afterwards, but let's go.
Can everybody hear me? Is this thing working?
A little bit higher.
Not better? Is that better?
Yeah. A little better.
I'm unaccustomed to these things, so just bear with me.
No, not great.
Put on your tie. Here's your tie.
How's that?
There you go.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. Just a couple of general comments and then we'll get started. First of all, on behalf of everybody here, I would just like to extend a big thanks to the library staff and the library trustees for initiating and continuing these kinds of forums. They aren't unique in New Hampshire, but I think the depth of the questions that these are evolving into in Hooksett, and the creativity in format, which I think you'll see in a few minutes, continue to be exceptional. And I can only expect that going forward they're going to get better and better. Thanks to you, the audience, for being here. These things mean nothing unless you're here with a desire to learn about the candidates. And and thanks for the candidates. I didn't count. I'm assuming all candidates are here, and I sure hope they are. The objective, I forgot one thing. Out of respect for all of us, anyone with a cell phone that's on, if you could put it on vibrate or off, that would certainly be appreciated. I know that there are probably parents here with kids at home, and I know there are probably some caregivers in the audience, but it's helpful if we have them off or on vibrate. The objective this evening is to maximize candidate discussions around relevant issues. Get to know the candidates. Some of you were here early enough to chat with the candidates. That way, you're an informed constituency. I can't emphasize enough that this is not a debate. It's not intended to be a debate. It's intended for candidates to respond to questions, stating opinions, positions, however they choose to answer the question. The questions are a result of the input from some of you. It is a series of questions that we compiled, and when I say we, I'm talking about the library trustees, Heather, Mary Farwell, well, she is a library trustee, and myself. Given that there are 11 candidates, we had to make sure we had the questions with enough depth so that we could start to set candidates in clear enough view so that people could cast ballots, cast votes that made sense. The questions were compiled, edited, reviewed, edited again over the last 3 or 4 days. A lot of work has gone into these questions. But I think they are clear and they are certainly relevant. Many are intentionally complex, and that's why we have the screens. We want everybody that's here to be able to see some of these questions because they have multiple parts. We have paper and pencils up here where the candidates are going to be seated so that the candidates can take notes about the questions. Okay, got that. All right, let's talk about format for a minute. I'd like the 1-year term and 2-year term candidates to come up and find a seat at the table. We're going to have 2 groups this evening. The first group are the 1- and 2-year candidate people. The second group will be the 3-year term candidates. The logistics of trying to deal with 11 and the logistics of responding, having 11 people, now 10, but 11 people respond to the same question 10 times in a row, dictated that we think outside the box. So what we're going to do, I'm not sure about this mic, what we're going to do is start with 4 people. We're going to give them 15 or 30 seconds to introduce themselves from a biographical standpoint. We're going to have 3 rounds of questions. The first 3 questions are pre-prepared. They'll be flashed on the screen and they'll be passed out to the candidates. And they'll respond. All questions tonight will have 2 minutes of response time. Round 2 is sort of different. Each candidate is going to pick a number out of a box, and the numbers correspond to a series of questions. There are 14 questions. 14 numbers in the box. Candidate picks 12. They get question 12. Number goes back in the box. That question gets answered. We move to the next candidate. Same process. There's 2 questions per candidate. If the candidate gets the same number twice, they put the number back and pull another number. The last round is basically a closing remarks by each of the candidates. Now, since the first 3 questions are the same for this group and the second group, we had to distinguish between the questions just enough so that the candidates in the audience do not get a unfair advantage. So they're the same content, but the questions are slightly different. Any questions? All right, running rules. As I said before, this is not a debate. Candidates will respond to the question and not each other. The focus will be on the questions and the issues, not on personalities or personal disagreements. Candidate responses will represent positions, thoughts, and opinions which persuade the electorate or a vote, as well as become the basis for future accountability if they are elected. Questions are timed at 2 minutes. I have a big clock. It's going to be sitting right out there. I'll keep looking at the clock, but so will the candidates. At 1 minute and 45 seconds, I'm going to stand up. I got to get a chair, but I'm going to stand up, and the candidates better be paying attention, because at 2 minutes, the only thing that's going to occur is the candidate can finish the sentence they're in. As we ask questions, I'm going to rotate who starts so that the same person doesn't get stuck in that number one position each time. Questions from the audience will not be taken. This is a pretty aggressive thing we're trying to accomplish between now and 9 o'clock this evening. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time for audience questions. Candidates and audience will remain respectful at all times. I don't want to hear any cheering, booing, applause, or other disruptions from the audience or from the candidates. Okay, let's have some fun and get to know the candidates. Question number one. I gotta get my phone. You thought I was kidding. That's a classic.
Why is it in front of me, Don?
You've been through this before, Todd. You know the drill. Okay.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
how long do you think it'll be before the second group gets up? If we have a time, if you have a time, what,
Probably
do you think an hour for the first group?
Probably 45 minutes.
45 minutes? Thank you.
Okay, question number one.
Hey, Don, introductions?
Oh, yeah, turn the questions upside down. Yeah, thanks, Mary. Appreciate that. I'm going to give the candidates 15 or 30 seconds or so to biographically introduce yourself. Starting here.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Yvonne Preston. I've lived here in Hooksett for about 16 years with my wonderful husband, Brian, who's sitting out in the audience. He promised he'd be the friendly face today. And I have 3 daughters. One is a 4th grader, one is a 7th grader, and one is a junior in high school. So I'm quite vested in this school board, school system. I am originally from Maine, have lived in New Hampshire since my early 20s when I attended Keene State College. I currently work in pharmaceutical sales, specializing in the diabetes market. I truly enjoy this as I spend a lot of time driving across this beautiful state, meeting a lot of wonderful people and bringing value to their patients and their offices. I cover all of New Hampshire from Coburg to Salem, Keene to Portsmouth, which is just fine with me because I do love New Hampshire. And anyway, thank you very much.
Todd?
Thank you. I'm Todd Lazat. I've lived in the town since 2006. I have 2 sons and a wife. I try to participate in as much as I can in volunteer activities. in leadership roles, or most of the time I'd like to be in the support role. I do engage in, and I have sought positions through elections in regards to town council and budget committee and so forth, in order to gain a better understanding of how our town runs. I'm a person I'm an engineer, so I sometimes overthink things. I'm also an inventor, so I tend to be a little bit more imaginative. And anyhow, the fact of the matter is that's why the clock is in front of me. But, thank you.
Okay, so I'll be brief because I got to save some for the 2 minutes at the end. I thought we had 1 minute at the beginning and that was it, so I'll use my first 30 seconds here. So, good evening, my name is Phil Denbo and I'm asking for your vote for Hooksett School Board on March 11th. I've lived here in town since 1989. Both my children have attended Hooksett schools from kindergarten through 8th grade. My daughter Christina attended Central, and my son now attends Pinkerton, which gives me first-hand experience with both schools. I've had the privilege of interacting with many of you in my roles at coaching baseball, soccer, in my neighborhood, on the zoning board, at the gym, or hanging at Chantilly's breakfast buffet, or waiting in line at Walmart. I'm that bald guy you see walking around town with a white dog that looks like Petey from the Little Rascals, making sure I make a pit stop to get him his honey glazed donut from Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you, Phil. Now, Joanne, you have to be careful because you're always 3 minutes.
Well, thank you for that, Dawn. Good evening. My name is Joanne McHugh, and I've been a resident here in Hooksett for the last 39 years. I'm married. I have 4 boys. They're all grown. They've been through the Hooksett schools and they've been through the Manchester schools, and they've all been on to college and are working very productively. I have a long history of volunteering in the Hooksett community, from the PTA to the planning board to, in fact, the school board. I have 21 years of service on the school board. I was on the planning board. I was actually very helpful in helping the school district get some property from Manchester Sand and Gravel for future use for schools. My background is accounting. I got my degree after my children went back to school, and I used my background in accounting, especially when we were working on the budget. I was the lead person to encourage the board to make sure that we not only had a budget that was reflective of our needs, but we didn't push the envelope as far as putting in too many wishes. Thank you.
Okay. Phones off. Introductions. Have I forgotten anything else? First question. You have the question? You can now read it. Do you support the Pinkerton Academy contract, which is Warrant Article 3? Yes or no? And then please explain your response. You'll each have 2 minutes, and 2 minutes only, to address the question. Starting here.
Love the first seat. I don't know why I picked this one. Okay, so I do support the Pinkerton contract, and the reason I thought long and hard about this, and the reason why I do support it, not only is it a wonderful school, but I can't say that Manchester is not a wonderful school. It has problems, but it has served us well over the years. I think for me, when I look back, when my daughter was opting out of Manchester 3 years ago, which was for a completely different reason than everybody, you know, in the last year, I think the part for me that makes me see that we should really partner with Pinkerton is that, you know, we've never really had a voice in Manchester. It feels like we kind of rent space there for our kids. And I'm not blaming them for that, and I'm not saying it's our fault. I'm just saying that the communication and maybe the, you know, the fact that we hadn't really sought out to sit on maybe their board. I'm not sure if that, you know, if that has, I know that that's been a possibility and we've always had a seat. Maybe we just didn't put somebody there because we didn't have enough people to do that. But I think for me and my 3 children, I'm looking for a partner in education. I'd like to see somebody, a school that is an extension of the Hooksett program. We have a wonderful K-8 program here, and since we don't have our own high school, it would be nice to have a partner in education, somebody where they will come and they will work with us in terms of aligning curriculum, helping us to make us better, as well as help them be better and bring our students some stability. My daughter is a 7th grader. Next year's a big year. And I'd like to see her have a great 8th grade year where she's not worried about where she's going to go to high school. And if for anybody who came to the Pinkerton presentation the other night, it was very clear that this is what they do. They partner with districts that don't have high schools, and they work well with them. Thank you very much.
Todd?
Yeah, I guess the simple question is yes. I think everyone knows my position. One of the things is, like, as an engineer, I'm a little bit more pragmatic about these things. I looked at the warrant and I said, that's the thing that's before us. The next thing I did is I looked at Hooksett history. And I went back to 1963 when the first high school was proposed. I went from there through till now, and what I found is we always come to the brink of making a decision, and we never make the decision. And I always say, if you give people indecision, they'll choose indecision. And I think at this point, I looked at the contract from that point. It's an opportunity. I share the same sentiments as Yvonne, but also I looked at it from this point. It's public education. I looked at, does this solution provide us a quality education? Yes. Does this solution provide equity to all students in terms of accessibility to a quality education? Yes. Third thing is it affordable? Yes. The fourth thing is the value proposition, which I don't think that we've, and I'll take a little bit of harsher tone towards Manchester's. The value proposition is what we pay in taxes equal the quality or value that we receive in regards to education. And I believe when you look at this contract from that pragmatic point, it does. So in those 4 criteria, I looked at the contract and said, well, what does it offer us? Is there balance? It gives us a 5-year transition, which means 45% of our kids have to go to Pinkerton, and 55% can opt out the first 5 years. The last 5 years is a commitment to Pinkerton. They're setting aside 20% of their capacity, and they're asking us to fill that in those last 5 years. And that's the balance. So when I look at this, I see equity, but I also see the chance of quality education that everybody can access equally. And that's really why I look at this as a good contract. Once again, we're at that brink. We're asking everybody. We're not telling everybody that looking at their past and say they had. All right, thank you.
Bill?
So from day one, even before I was appointed at the board last year, or to the board, I should say, I was pretty vocal proponent of the fact that we need an anchor school here in Hooksett. I believe we do need some limited choice for the folks that live on the north end of Hooksett that are going to have, huge traveling issues, not huge traveling issues, but more traveling issues than other folks. And at present, there are only 2 places that can accommodate all of our kids. One of them is Manchester, and one of them is Pinkerton. And that's really what this is all about. So if you line those 2 districts up against each other, echoing what Yvonne and Todd said, we've had consistent problems over the years. We've had to keep reminding them to stick to the contract that was in place. They pink slip teachers every year, or almost every year, because they have problems with the teacher. There's, again, a lot of issues. So if you line the 2 schools up and you go and tour both schools, there are definitely instances where kids in Manchester, I'm not saying kids in Manchester can't do great. What I'm saying is we should put as few barriers in front of our kids as possible. I don't worry about the level 4 and AP kids. They'll do great wherever they are. They would have done great in Claremont when Claremont was having problems back in the 80s, right? But I worry about the level 3, level 2 CTE kids, that unconventional education kids. This year, or last year, there were 3 kids at MST in Manchester. At Pinkerton, they make as many classes as they need to accommodate as many kids as will come. From a personal standpoint, I had an issue at Central, my daughter, where they removed her from a class 2 months into the year that she loved. The department head supported her, everybody supported her staying there. They moved her. For 4 months after that, she went to 2 classes. The class she was put in and the one she was in prior, because there was a seat left in there, and attended there instead of going lunch so she could keep up. Not every kid's going to do that. A level 2, level 3 kid is not going to do that. If it wasn't for my daughter going to those 2 classes, she probably would have failed that math class. That's about it.
Thank you, Phil. Joanne?
Well, I would say this. This is an issue that I've struggled with, and at the present time, I can't answer yes or no, and I'll tell you the reason why. Over the years, I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, the board has had occasion where things have occurred in Manchester and the board has not reacted to it. And I'm left with a contract that doesn't seem to address a lot of those issues. And I wonder whether the door is going to be closed on Manchester, and whether or not that door being closed with regard to Manchester, if it poses a problem with us as far as the students that still want to attend. Right now, the agreement calls for 4 years that our students will still be able to attend, and then to go back and renegotiate a contract that would allow us to continue. My concern lies in the fact that if there are a number of students who wish to continue in Manchester, that they will not be able to attend. Given those statements that I just made, I want to speak about the Pinkerton High School. I'll state this, and I'll state this quite firmly, that I would be lying if I said that Pinkerton was not a good school, because Pinkerton is a very good school. It offers a breadth of courses that I think students can certainly avail themselves. But I think the missing piece for Hooksett here is that the board needed to engage the community, engage the residents of Hooksett to see what Hooksett wanted for its students. What is in the best interest of the students?
Thank you, Joanne. Okay. Everybody comfortable with how this is going to proceed? Can everybody hear? No hands are waving, so I'm assuming everybody can hear. Question 2. Don't mind me. Okay, the question is, do you support the formation of a committee to examine whether Hooksett School District remains in SAU 15, and why? Todd, let's start with you.
Yes, sir. I do. I'm a data junkie, so my position is that if you can form a committee of citizens, then that can go in and explore this type of removal in order to understand and ascertain if it's even viable. Now, one of the reasons why is because that one of the discussions is talking about our own high school. In order to do something like that, we have, once again, a history of when it came time to potentially invest in a high school or do a co-op with another district. One of the things that came up was local control. And I think if you're making large investments and you're getting larger, as a large organization, the question then becomes is, are you stretching, with being within SAU, are you stretching your resources where you need to concentrate them more in your own district? Now, this is not a new thing for Hooksett. Hooksett removed itself from SAU 53, which was part of Pembroke and so forth. The other thing, too, is SAU 15 included Raymond. Raymond removed themselves because they ended up having their own high school and such. So I think I never assign intent, people's intent, because the reality of it is anyone can put a petition forward. The question about worrying about it, the idea would be, I hope citizens come forward to ask to be placed on that committee and have an open mind to gather that data, to supply that data to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Bill?
Yeah. So I will tell you, I am not in favor. I know Todd just mentioned, I think it takes 25 folks to put it on the warrant. We looked at this about 4 years ago, I believe, and at that time, the motivation was financial. So they went through all the process, had a committee, did all the things that Todd was just talking about, and they found out at the end of the day the savings was going to be minimal, if nothing. So it died on the vine. So that's one aspect, I guess, why some people want to look at it. The other one is maybe, I don't know, the folks are overwhelmed, the Hooksett's getting too big. I will tell you that at our SAU meetings, for 60% of the SAU's costs, we're getting about 95% of their time right now, from Dr. Littlefield on down, because of all the issues we have going on here in town. And that was part of what we discussed, actually, the SAU, with some of the other towns, you know. Obviously, are thinking, geez, you know, you guys are getting a lot of Dr. Littlefield and those folks' time. So I think they do a great job. They're underpaid and overworked at this time, and a lot of it's self-inflicted, because a lot of the stuff we go on with high school, there's not a need for it. And it's putting an extra burden on Dr. Littlefield and the administrative staff. So I think if we get that straightened away, and the behavior that's causing that, their time will be more allocated equally to the other districts versus us getting way more than we pay for right now.
Thank you, Phil. Joanne?
This is the third time that this question has come up to a vote. And I can tell you from my experience that the Department of Ed, who gives the approval for a district to withdraw from an SAU, does not look too favorably on this issue. And the reason why is most often they feel that it becomes a financial burden to the remaining communities. And the last time, it had more to do with the fact that the two remaining districts in the SAU were going to be hurt financially, and not necessarily that it wasn't going to save the town money. As for the issue presently, do I support it? I would say this: I think that Hooksett has more pressing issues at the moment to be spending their time and efforts, and I'm not supporting it this time.
Yvonne?
I want to echo Joanne's sentiments and Phil's. I do not support the formation of this committee. I believe that we should really stay within our SAU. I think Dr. Littlefield and the staff have done a tremendous job under some unbelievable circumstances, and I do feel it's good to have that partnership with our neighbors, with Candy and Auburn. And you know, local control means more costs. Do we really want to have more costs? I mean, we'd have to support our own staff here, and I like, you know, I'm a taxpayer. I own a home here, and I like to keep my taxes low as well. So I'm looking out for not just, you know, I'm looking out for the taxpayers as well. And I truly believe that Dr. Littlefield is an asset to this community, and I would absolutely not support this.
Thank you. Good job on that one. Number 3, and the last question in this round. Okay. Question 3 is, explain how you will set aside your personal objectives and work collectively and civilly with 6 other board members to develop solutions to any district issue that may be contrary to your personal desired outcome, and refrain from undermining, either officially or unofficially, the same after the vote. Support your response with a specific example. Phil, I think it's on you.
Okie doke. So I can give a specific example. Again, I mentioned earlier, from the get-go, even before I was appointed to the board, I was in favor of an anchor school that would consistently exceed state standards, which is Pinkerton. We looked at all the other schools, they couldn't accommodate our kids. So I came out of the box like that. After speaking with some other folks on the board, and obviously working with Dr. Littlefield, we went from a single school contract to this hybrid model we're talking about. So, modify the position on that. We went with the hybrid model. We got some MOUs together with these schools to create a transition period so we could transition towards Pinkerton 5 or 6 years from now. If you watch any of the tape from the board meetings, I'm civil with everybody. I don't raise my voice. I don't yell over anybody, even though I've witnessed much of the same. With that hybrid model, I haven't done anything on any vote that I've had on the board, whether I was on the majority or the minority. I haven't went back on the backside and tried to undermine anything or spoken against it. Sorry. In my mind, I don't think that's ethical. I haven't done that on other boards, and if I'm elected, I would continue not to do that on this board. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Joanne?
Well, first of all, I'd like to use the example of the board having retreats and putting together a strategic plan. I've certainly been involved in both of those. The board does normally have an annual retreat where the board decides on the goals that they want to achieve over the course of the next school year. And many times we'll do strategic planning. And I think I've been in situations that a lot of times I thought to myself, well, you know, I think this is the best approach, but I've always adopted the attitude that the other side of opinion brings things that I normally would not think of. So I've always encouraged to hear out people who have an opposing view from me. And I think that has served me well over the years. The other thing that I think has been very, very helpful for the board is that over the course of the years, we've brought in people at different times to help the board with issues about relationships amongst the board in working together. And I would certainly encourage that for a new board, because I think it's something that is not only very, very helpful, but proves to help the board get through its work and its responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Yvonne?
Okay, so I have many, many years of work experience of working in groups where we're dependent on each other to make money. So we've all had to work collaboratively to get our objectives accomplished. So that's my experience. I have about 15 to 20 years of that kind of experience. In terms of this board, I honestly think communication with the public is kind of an issue. And I think that in the way that there's a lot of things that go out on social media, and as a board, I hope to bring a team atmosphere where, you know, we will not, you know, we'll speak with one voice. And I think that that's important to portray to the public, not saying to hold back the problems, but I'm saying that if you speak with one voice and you unite as one team, whether you're the minority or the majority, you should work together, and you should really, you know, bring that forward in a way that shows to the public that you're actually adults and behaving well and acting in an appropriate way. Getting on social media as a board member is not something I would do, not to vent any problems that are occurring on the board. You know, in Bow, they actually, the superintendent puts out a newsletter every month or so that discusses board activities and informs the public, and I'd like to try to implement that as a board member. I think that's really important to have that, you know, controlled exchange with the public so that they see what is going on, but they're not hearing all the discourse. Hopefully there won't be any, and you know, that's my hope.
Thank you. Todd?
Thank you. Well, I guess what I'd say this is I have probably a 5-year history of working on boards and negotiating and talking about things. One of the things I'm known for is asking hard questions. I know that, and I like asking questions that nobody likes to ask, just to put the debate. Because if you don't get ideas out there, then what ends up happening is you have people on the board who think that their word isn't being heard. And if you look at some of the work that I've done on the town council, you'll see that reflected in how my approach. I'm data driven, so I like all kinds of points of view, and I think it goes to each of our, I guess, human nature. I think I'm one that can over time and through, you know, sensory input is shown that I can adjust and I can and look at different perspectives. Matter of fact, I always say I'd always love to have our board argue opposite positions. I'd love to get on this board and argue the Manchester position. I think I could argue it quite well, because I look at things from all different directions and then try to say, you know, what is the best answer that we have? And so that when we make sure that we ask all those questions and we extract out of people the questions. One of the things I'll say for my final comment is, one of the things I've learned is feedback. Mary Farwell used to say to me, you know, Todd, you idiot, why didn't you, when you made that motion and you voted on it, why didn't you explain yourself? And it was one, you know, it was one of those moments where you want to just, people could say, I'm not going to deal with that question, but the reality of it was real. And now if you notice over the years, I speak to motions, even if they're simple ones. I'll give you my opinion. And then I vote with the group, and yea or nay, we move on. And that's really how a board should operate. So I think I have a history of showing that, and I'll bring that to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Okay. I'd like to thank the candidates for paying attention to the time. It's making my job much easier. I don't like to get in the way, but somebody's got to keep track of time. Now the fun begins. We are now going into uncharted territory.
Speed round.
I'm going to start with Joanne. And she gets to pick a number.
Retreat.
If I don't like it, can I pick again?
Just pick a number.
14.
14.
So if it's my lucky
Don't,
number.
don't put the number back on top of the box,
Oh, okay.
because it's going to go back in the box. Is that 14? Yeah, go ahead with 14.
Close your eyes, don't look at the
Now you get a softball question. How will you evaluate the effectiveness of the delivery of special education? 2 minutes.
That's a very good question, and in fact, of lately, I've heard a couple of concerns with regard to special education. I think the first thing that I would do would certainly be to call the Department of Ed with regard to special ed, since they are the people that monitor special ed. I would ask them to come to Hooksett and explain to the board essentially some of the rules and regulations with regard to special ed. Special ed is very specific with regard to the law. I believe the law is 94-142, and it speaks to the fact of students being in the least restrictive environment, which means that the students should be able to be in an environment where they're not completely set aside, but yet they are getting the services that they need to receive. And I would begin there, because certainly those are the people that are reviewing to make sure that we're in compliance. And then I would ask for an audit, basically, of how we're doing things in Hooksett. I think as far as special ed, most of you understand that a greater part of the budget is spent on special ed. And I think that we not only need to make sure that the students who need the services are receiving the services, but that we do the best that we can with the funds that we have available. And I think that is so important, and I think that's something that should be done with regard to that.
You still have 10 seconds left.
Well, first of all, I want to say that...
Time.
Thank you, Don.
Pick the number.
last
Number
and
one.
first.
All right, question number 1. Common Core. Describe your understanding of Common Core. Do you agree with this initiative, yes or no? Or explain why. And do you support New Hampshire House Bill 1508, which, as I understand it, deletes the Common Core requirements for New Hampshire?
Okay, well, Common Core standards are basically setting a bar really for all the schools, setting standards. Initiatives in New Hampshire, I think, include math, reading, and actually have it right here. It's a clear understanding, and I think setting standards in any type of situation is good. It sort of sets that bar. And if you exceed the bar, that's great. But at least everyone's on the same page. It's probably really good for college as well because you're delivering sort of the same kind of education. Same thing with healthcare. You're delivering the same kind of healthcare, so it makes things a little bit more uniformed and easier. In terms of the House bill, to delete the Common Core requirements for New Hampshire, I don't really support that because I do believe that we have to have some objectives and some uniformity in terms of delivery of education. I'm really new at this, and I have done quite a bit of research, and I've actually printed off all of the Common Core objectives for Hooksett, and I think that anything that improves education and gets us on the same page is a good thing. So that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your turn.
All right.
Number 5. Number 5, school board relationships. Understanding that school board members have authority for school issues in the broadest sense, in the context of a board, not as individuals. Let me read that again because I didn't read it quite right. Understanding that school board members have authority for school issues in the broadest context as a board and not as individuals, please discuss the following: the relationship of the school board and the superintendent, the relationship of the school board and district and school staff, and what is the role of the superintendent as an unelected public official? Go.
All right, well, in terms of a board, the individual and person on the board, I always make that distinction. Once you're on the board, you're a member of the board. Once you leave that room, you also have to remember that you're part of the board. You're not back to an individual. As far as the superintendent is, I look at it as basically a CEO of the corporation, and the school board is the board of directors. So the reality of it is the board should set up objectives, policies, goals to reach, and so forth for that CEO to reach. At the end of the term, and they evaluate that CEO. That's the oversight aspect of it. It's nothing more, nothing less. That's the professional you put in charge in order to deliver education to the Hooksett School District. But I believe that board needs to be mindful of the fact that they are an oversight. You need to dig in a little bit. You need to make sure that we're getting the best value out of that person, because ultimately, you don't get a redo on kids after they go through the system. So it's very important. As far as the superintendent's role and as an unelected public official, he's the voice of the district. He can share his opinion as long as it's within the confines of the policy dictated by the board, the school board. And I think it's a pretty straightforward relationship. We are policy, they are admin. We set objectives, they reach objectives. We evaluate how well they reached objectives, and we give praise or criticism based on it. And then we reset it and look to set another set of objectives. And I think it goes to the fact on the policy side is, I think we just got to make sure as a board that we understand what we need to review in order to give good criticism back in terms of performance.
Thank you. Take a number.
Take a number. 5. Just kidding. 7.
That's what you have.
It's easy when it's already served up, right?
Well, that's fine. But Todd doesn't get 5 again. Number 7. Meeting rules. How should school board meetings be formatted and conducted? Is the use of Robert's Rules of Order or any recognized set of meeting rules important? Why or why not? And discuss your views on completing posted agendas at each meeting. Go.
Okay, so as far as the format goes, I believe Robert's rules are what we now use as a base. I believe that's a good thing to a point. So in any job or in any role, I find this at work too sometimes, where the actual work becomes more about the process than the work. So I think that's a delicate balance. I think there are boards that do better than the board has done, or we've done this year, and I think there are boards that have done worse. I also think there are folks that can do well without things being so formal. I'll give you, for example, the Candia and Auburn boards seem to be very civil and work very well, and they're not as strict with the Robert's rules as some other folks would be. So I think there needs to be a base, but at the end of the day, I don't think you can teach people to be civil or ethic. I think you have to rely on the folks on your board and the folks that you elect to do the right thing, no matter what the set of rules are. As far as the posted agendas for the meeting, so I believe we should try to complete the agendas. We've obviously had some times this year where we've had items carry for weeks and months because we had items on the agenda that just too many items on the agenda to get to, and with all the other high school issues. So I believe we should set one that we could complete. So you're not setting the bar way too high where you're putting too many items on and things don't get done. So I think if the agenda is manageable, I also think sometimes there are items when the agenda is posted, when it comes up with some of these special meetings and such, where I know there's like a main topic, but again, I don't think folks should be rigid. So if there's something that kind of borders on the edge of where you should be that is valid and something that's connected to the meeting you're at, I think you should discuss it.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, everybody getting the hang of it? Not sure I am.
Another number?
Don't look at the numbers.
I said another number. 15.
15 doesn't exist.
Oh, okay, can I get a pass?
I went looking for that earlier.
The question got deleted.
There's a couple of them here.
No,
Together.
we combined some questions.
I thought you get to make up your own.
What's that?
Hey, that's not infinity. That's eight. Number 8. Oh boy, fund balance spending. The school district fiscal year extends from July 1 to June 30. It is now June 15th, and the board is meeting. During the meeting, the superintendent reports that the financial performance of the district is exceptional, and $500,000 is unspent and unencumbered. There is discussion by board members and the superintendent about spending most of that money for some exciting new technology that was not available when the budget was prepared. It will greatly improve the environment of all classrooms. What is your input to that discussion, and how would you vote if a motion was made to spend money?
I have a practice with regard to fund balances that I've held to over the years. And the distinction that I make is if it's an emergency item that the school district needs, whether or not it's a repair or something like that, I would certainly consider it, and probably, if it was really needed, I would approve it, but I don't make a practice of doing that, approving things that are probably on a wish list or something like that at the very end. I believe the proper thing to do is to return the money to be used to offset the tax rate. And that's the way I've operated basically over the years that I've been on the school board. And I take that very, very seriously. And I think that's what the voters expect of me. And that's what I've done. Thank you.
Thank you. You still have a minute left.
I'd like to see that number 15 again.
Yvonne, number 12. Number 12, is it the one we combined? It is, isn't it? What is the role of the school board?
No,
No.
resource allocation.
Oh, you're right, you're right, you're right. If state and federal resources for education continue to dwindle, much greater pressure will be placed on the Hooksett school budget. In that case, what are your targets for reducing the expenditures to close the budget gaps created by state and federal downshifting?
Well, in this situation, I would, first of all, I would look at those state and federal resources, because I would see if there's any chance that we could, apply for a grant, maybe find some money in those situations. But if they were dwindling and I had to reduce resources, I think I would collaborate with the superintendent, with the board members, with the administration, to see where things could be reduced. Hopefully we'd have something like Joanne's situation where we'd have a fund balance. And then we wouldn't really have that problem. But honestly, I think, like I said, I would really do the research to seek out the best alternative. And that would happen really working collaboratively, obviously, with the people who know the budget extremely well, and really the administration, to see where, they know where they can make the sacrifices where it's not going to hurt the kids. And that's really the most important thing, is not to let it affect the children and the staff, because they're wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Oops, I got two.
Number 7. We had 7 before? Yeah, we have.
Yep.
Well, that's the random nature. Meeting rules.
I get 7 again.
You didn't get it before.
All right, that's fine.
Your buddy.
Good.
How should school board meetings be formatted and conducted?
All right, well, this is going to be really simple.
Is the use of Robert's rules, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Take it.
Sure. I'm a strong proponent of Robert's rules. Now let me say that you can allow Robert rules to bog you down, or you can use it in the way it's supposed to be used, and it actually is very free floating. On the town council, if you notice, Robert's rules basically dictates decorum. If you ever see me in action, not 100% of the time, but at least 95% of the time, I address the chair. Chair, could I talk to you? I also want to make comments. Someone makes a comment on something, and I'll raise my hand and I'll say, Chair, I'd like to make a comment. And then they'll say, do you want to make a comment on that? And I say, no, Chair, I'm making a comment to the chair. And I'll speak to the chair. When you start getting into the practice of it, when you start getting into the practice of it, it becomes easier and easier. And that's the difficulty. When you're not in practice of it, you can think it bogs you down. Reality of it doesn't. The other thing that's important about Robert rules is that when a board makes a decision, your decision can be overturned by the court. And if someone in the audience says, you didn't follow proper protocol, and you didn't take a proper vote, or you didn't rescind that in the right way, they go to the court of law, and they say, you said you follow these rules, you said you do this, you did it here, you didn't do it here. Guess what? your things could be overturned. So there's a point where you need that. The other thing too is rules create decorum. If you say you can speak twice to it, trust me, my chair on town council, Jim Sullivan, has said, hey, you spoke your turn, and you understand that. And once you know that rule, you follow that rule. And sometimes you try to get away with it, but then your fellow members of the board will put you in your place. And that's their right, because you are following those rules, and everyone follows that rule. So I'm a proponent of it. I don't think it hinders anything. So as far as agendas, the key here is coming to an agreement with the board on what goes on the agenda. And if I think that you can, on the town council, we've come up to the point where we do finish our agendas. And if we have to table something to extend a discussion, when we extend it. But I think the rules are what actually allow you to get through that agenda.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Last question of the round. Good thing that Kemp was on there.
10. Something new.
Okay, that's something new.
There we go. Box of chocolates.
Sorry about knocking your water over.
That's all right.
Superintendent resigns the evening before the next school board meeting. In your opinion, what are the next 3 steps the board must address? Clock's ticking.
Okay. Interesting. Save the best for last, right? So, if the superintendent resigned, that'd be a tough one because we look to him for a lot for advice. So, I would say we would speak to the SAU, call the Department of Ed, I would imagine first. We get together, we don't need a special meeting because the next night was our meeting. But again, get together as a board, put together a game plan, decide what we're going to do in the interim. Also look for an interim superintendent. So if we had somebody that was here or somebody that was local that just resigned or left their post. Well, I don't know if there's any kind of succession, to be truthful with you, in the state law where maybe we'd have a principal or somebody, or assistant superintendent jump up in that spot. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that would make a lot of sense in our case. So we had Marge jump in. She'd do a great job. And then give us a little bit of time to do a superintendent search and find somebody new.
Thank you. Can I put that number back in here, or you still got it?
I don't know. I don't think anybody else wants it. Sorry.
Okay. That away. The last question is open-ended. No, it's not really a question. It's open-ended. You can make unlimited content closing remarks. It's a 2-minute response. What we'd like is for you to include 2 items. Your future involvement if you are not elected. And secondly, how your constituents can trust that you will discharge your responsibilities as you have responded this evening. And cite a specific example to support that response.
Tom, could you repeat that again real quick?
Well, you can read it. You can read it better than I could say it.
I have eyes in the back of my head, right? Isn't that how it goes?
Everybody got it? Okay, Joanne, you're up.
The first part of the question that dealt with if I'm unsuccessful at becoming a school board member, I think I would continue to do just exactly what I've done in the community over the last 26, 27 years. I always seem to find someplace to lend a hand, so I don't think really anything would be too different. As far as how would I discharge my responsibilities as a school board member, I think I would continue to be as mindful as I have been in the past with regard to being a school board member. The one thing that not only do I understand, but I have said to many of folk at a meeting or when I'm not at a meeting with regard to my role on the school board. I am not the school board. I'm only part of the school board when we sit as a school board and make decisions with regard to policy or whatnot. So I cannot go out and individually seek out any person to make any kind of agreement or anything like that. Only the Board of School Committee can do that. As far as conducting myself at the meeting, I think that's very, very important. How you conduct yourself at the meeting sets the tone, not only for what happens at the meeting, but sets the tone for the district as a whole, how people respond back. If you show no respect to the other board members, there won't be respect for the school district itself, and I think that's unfortunate. And then the other thing that I think that I live by, and it's something that came from Superintendent Dave Cawley, who the middle school is named after. He always
5
said,
more seconds.
he said, if it's good for kids, that's what you should be doing, and that's how I voted.
Thank you, Joanne. Yvonne?
Okay, I'm going to start with the second part. You know, I've lived in this town for a lot of years. I haven't volunteered in this capacity. I have sat on the HYA soccer board and helped there. I have a history of working collaboratively. I've also taught CCD for 6 years, so I know a lot of the kids in this town. I am who I am. I never pretend to be anybody else. I'm as honest gets. Sometimes it's not, you know, sometimes it's hard for people to hear the honest truth, and sometimes it's hard to, you know, it's hard for people to understand, you know, why I would be so honest. But I think that you can't move forward unless you know the honest truth. And if you, if somebody, I would rather have somebody tell me that my behavior may not be appropriate, or, you know, I would rather have somebody point out to me a truth so that I know how to implement a change. So for me, you know, I am who I am. This is what you get. And I would sit on this board and I would do a fabulous job. I would look at it as a job and I'd take it very seriously. And I would not deviate from my principles of being an honest person. In terms of the future, I will not, I would still go to school board meetings. My children are my priority, obviously, and I would want to have some involvement because I think we have some very difficult issues here that need to be addressed. And I would be a vocal, you know, vocal voice in that. I would want to really be involved still. So, you know, I would absolutely help in any way that I can, which I've always done as I've lived here for 17 years almost. So that's it.
Thank you, Yvonne. Todd?
Thank you. I guess, well, if unsuccessful, one of my things is that I always say the opponent should be able to go into office and discharge that office. It shouldn't be my role to try to wedge myself in. However, I do get a lot of calls for people that want me to be on a committee or something like that, or add input or add some advice, and I always look for those opportunities. But I would wait if the board set up a subcommittee or something like that. I would definitely volunteer if they wanted my any of my expertise or my thoughts on things. I, like Joanne, there's always opportunities to volunteer in this community, so and it always comes to your door usually if they know you're willing. As far as discharging my office, like I said, I got 5 years. It's pretty clear on how I do things. You know, I put it out there in terms of positions. It's kind of like, I'll give you a good example, it's kind of like this position with Pinkerton. Someone told me, why are you doing this? Why don't you just, you could, I think you could negotiate a better deal. And I said, well, that's fine. But the point is, in an election, you have to take a position. I believe you have to take a solid position, and sometimes it's a little less, it's uncomfortable. It would have been easier for me to be up here and say, I don't think we should vote for the SAU, checking with the SAU. But you know me as a data guy. Why would I be feared data? It would be safe for me to say no. So that's why I look at it that way. The other thing too is 25 people come up with a petition. You know, it's the voters speaking. So those are types of examples where, yes, I could take safe positions, but would you rather know where I really stand in the way I analyze things? If you notice, when I put stuff out there, I put my name and number on it. Anybody can call me. I can agree to disagree. And there's a few people that are friends of mine that have no problem calling me up and telling me what they think. And I listen. And, and that's my nature. So I'll discharge the office the way I always discharge it.
5 seconds now.
Yeah. And I appreciate a vote. Thank you.
Before this mic completely drops on the floor, Phil, you're up.
Sure. Okay, so first I want to say, to address the issue if I'm not elected. I've actually already talked to Joanne about this when we first met. I've seen her around town, seen her name, seen her face, never put the name and the face together. And the first thing I said to her after we met, and she would verify this, I said, you know what, Joanne, I said, you seem like a very respectful, rational, very nice lady, very sweet, just from the first talking to her. So I don't think there's any bad choice here, is what I want to say. So if I don't get on the board, I actually, I asked my wife this when I came on to run this year, and we talked about it, and we thought about the fact that even if I didn't run, we'd still be involved. So I said, you know what, why don't I stick it out? I jumped in on this board when I knew it was going to be difficult. Some other folks, we tried to step up the plate with Jim Legier, some other folks, and weren't able to get on, and I was. So again, I proactively jumped into something where I knew it was going to be difficult, and I think I've done a pretty decent job at it. Just to finish up and level set a little bit and talk a little bit about conduct, what some of these folks mentioned. So last summer I was appointed to the school board and proactively stepped into what I knew was going to be a very difficult task. Dana Agro had just exited, Mike Dubitz had resigned. At that time the board was deadlocked on everything from where people sat, projector location, to appointing someone to fill Mike's vacant seat. I inherited a situation where board members had made decisions that flew in the face of the advice of legal counsel. The board had also already filed breach with Manchester, and Manchester filed an injunction against Hooksett. To top that off, I can honestly say I could never in my wildest dreams have forecast the bizarre behavior I will witness from my front row seat in the Colley media room this past year.
5 seconds.
I would say the primary motivation is that I care deeply about the future of our Hooksett kids. Throughout this whole ordeal, I've kept my cool at meetings, been respectful of others, haven't shouted over anyone, been civil, ethical, tried my best to find common sense solutions to problems I had no hand in creating.
Thank you, Phil.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I'd say we had a pretty good round first group. Big round of applause for them. It's not easy, and I wouldn't want to be sitting up here responding to questions. So I know how difficult it can be, and I think they did well. I think the format kind of worked. I don't know how you feel about it. We'll ask at the end of it when we get done with the other group. Great job.